Hey, this is Trav here. Just a reminder that there is a Patreon account for this podcast, and it really helps keep this podcast going and paid for every month. And I would just like to thank the supporters so far, and that's Bill, Grant, Lisa, Mog, Dan, and Paula. Thank you so much, and here's the podcast. Hey, welcome to episode 159 of Tales from the Mind Boat, the slow-moving boat ride into the Willy Wonka-esque dream factory of my mind. This is Trav Nash speaking, and thank you very much for climbing aboard this episode. I hope it's a pleasant journey, and I really appreciate you coming along. And today's show is all about going to the dentist and walking down Grey Street and the pain that some of us experience at different levels. So it's a good show, and all you need to do is sit back, relax, think about what are you going to do on your holidays as we set sail. So, are you experiencing any pain from last week? My dentist casually asked me, which is a curious question to ask someone. And I know he was talking about the last appointment where he drilled a hole into my infected tooth, but it kind of feels like something that should be a formal greeting, a verbal handshake, a general understanding that life is filled with emotional and physical pain that can sometimes be unbearable at times. And just being asked about how you're dealing with the pain is like the pressure valve being let off and all that compressed steam is let free that was clogging up your pipes. But really, I haven't been feeling any pain. At least not anything to do with the dentistry he's done with my teeth last week. I felt like I must be already subconsciously killing off all the nerves. Those twitching blades of tiny fingertips that can translate something that needs my attention and sends a message to my brain that makes me winch and hold my palm up to my cheek and rub it, convincing myself that this is more effective than having to sit in a dentist chair and actually have someone qualified to fix the problem. I guess over the years I've tried to ignore all the pain. His messages are like a lookout in a crow's nest of some elaborate Spanish galleon. "Danger ahead," they would yell down to me, and I would not heed this warning and take a chance just to keep going straight on, right into the treacherous waters and jagged rocks that could so easily cut the bows of the ship open and sink my battleship. The dentist chair sits in the center of a cluttered room with mustard walls. Desks line the edge of tools and folders and papers. Computer screens are lined up near one of the windows, and x-rays of white ghostly teeth bleed through the black edges around it. The room is thick with an unknown chemical smell that seems to be taking on a light form, and you can almost have your nostrils blocked if you breathed in too much all in the one time. The dentist assistant makes a hand gesture to the chair, and like muscle memory, I lay back down on the crackling leather backrest as a bib is placed over my chest and tied behind my neck, and I have brief flashes of sitting in a high chair back in my family's kitchen, making rhythmic primal drum sounds as I bash the plastic table that's in front of me with a plastic spoon. Dark glasses are slid onto my head and cover my eyes, and as soon as the headrest begins to mechanically lower with a soft humming sound, I look into the bright 3 lights above me and see beyond those lights, see beyond the ceiling and even the sky. I detach my mind from my body and letting go of it like a helium balloon and let it drift off away from all that is about to happen. My mind tilts down and sees some kind of clamps being placed on both sides of my mouth and tilts back up and ascends far away from the room to someplace better. "So, there was no pain at all last week?" the dentist asks again, with a curious, almost distrusting tone. I suddenly realized that I had freed my mind too soon, and forgot to answer any questions that may help with the dental work ahead. He loosens the clamp on my mouth so I can speak, and in my head, I'm furiously reeling in my mind again so I can answer. "No," I finally said, hoping that wasn't too much of an awkward pause in between the question and my answer. I felt a bit tired afterwards, might have had a little lockjaw, but apart from that, the only thing I really experienced was my right ear has been ringing and blocked ever since I was last here. I'm not sure if these things are related or it's just a coincidence. The dentist stopped setting up his tools for a second and looked over me now with his mouth covered in a surgical mask, but his eyes and brow were now locked in a confused state. "Never heard that before. Is it in your nose? Was your nose blocked at all?" "No, it's just my right ear, but it feels like it's the lower track from my ear to my throat." I realized after I said this that I have no idea if that's even a thing. In my head, I imagine it's just a jumble of hoses and wires, like the sprinkler system my dad installed in the front garden all those summers ago. "That's really odd," said the dentist, who was really thinking about it now. His eyes looked up and to the right, like something above him would have the answer he's searching for. We did go to work on the right side of the mouth last week, but I've never heard of it creating an ear infection. If it was your top tooth on your right, I think it would make more sense that your nose and ear would be congested. I really didn't want to think about it anymore. The ringing in my ear was manageable, although it muffled my voice in my head like I'm speaking through an old busted radio you would pick up at a second-hand store like Cash Converters. "It's probably just a coincidence," I said. "I'm gonna go to the doctor this week, anyway, and she can have a look in my ear and see what's going on." "Yeah," said the dentist. "Let me know what she says, because I've never heard of anything like that before." We both turned away from each other. He laid out a series of tools and I tried not to focus on them. I began to focus now on the lights above me and was preparing to release my mind again into the endless void above. "But apart from that, there was no pain?" he asked again, rubbing where his mouth was behind his mask. "No pain," I said, and then I let go, locked into the lights while my gum was being numbed. A light prick above the tooth, I drifted away until it was safe to return again. The truth is, I haven't really experienced much pain. Not real pain, at least. Maybe the worst I've ever had to go through physically was when my wisdom teeth became infected, and for 2 days I was in a fetal position, wailing in agony. Sometimes I just face planted my whole head into my pillow, trying to snuff out my mouth altogether to put out that pain fire that was burning the inside of my mouth out. Aside from those brief couple of days and some occasional severe migraines I used to get about maybe once a week, I haven't really experienced any pain. Not real pain, at least. Not the kind of pain I've witnessed when I've laid in corridors of emergency wards after one of my seizures and have heard a woman somewhere screaming out in crippling agony, and nurses from all directions come running off into the maze of corridors and rows of sick people who lay there until someone finally takes the time to check on them. There is, of course, the pain of the heart and mind, the shock of events in your life that you knew were coming, but when it finally arrives, it still surprises you. You realize that things were never as they first appeared. It was all some kind of a mistake, and you feel yourself becoming heavier, and everything inside aches. If there was a huge pit somewhere where I could throw myself into every time this happened, I would have been buried years ago under a land full of similarly broken people. The heartbroken, the jobless, the homeless, the divorced, the scammed, the imprisoned and the lonely, all turning ourselves inside out as we roll in our own self-pity and the illusion we are the only ones on earth who are in this much pain right now. But in time you get over it. We learn how to mute it down a little bit and the shudders become less frequent. Maybe over the years I've killed it off, like the nerves, some kind of self-protection mechanism to never have to really feel that kind of pain again. And if you stick around long enough and live through those dark times, you find yourself changed at the other end. Maybe we have to leave a piece of ourselves behind. Events that change us subtly, we don't notice, but in retrospect we wouldn't recognize our younger selves if we ever bumped into them. The world carries on, and you have to try and keep up, otherwise you're just standing around with all the other old broken people, watching the new generation now claiming the horses of the carousel, and experiencing that whimsical ride of all the music and flashing lights that entice us that things aren't as bad as all the adults moan and groan about, in the never-ending attempt to fool themselves at thinking that things were so much better in their day. But when did any of us have that day? At best we have moments in our memory. We file them away in different categories and place them like screensavers in our head, where certain smells and names or possibly places evoke something that turns on the picture show, and you're only looking back for a fisheye lens and not seeing the full picture. Things are never as they seem. There's pain there. It's linked to our lives, just as there's joy, contentment and love. It's a constant balancing act to position yourself somewhere in the middle and not fall backwards into the full force of any one true emotion. It does something to the way you think and act. It shuts down the common sense and clouds your better judgment. Staying in control while you can. Staying in control while I can is what I'm fighting for these days, and not to lose myself or stray too far. I'm not sure what's out there, and I want to be ready for when it comes. Walking to the dentist is like walking in and out of different worlds. One minute I'm walking down perfectly manicured lawns and solar panels on modern looking homes. The next I'm walking down streets of old run-down plaster rooming houses, closed down milk bars that still advertise Pepsi, and streets ice cream with rain-beaten signs that haven't been touched since they were put up in the early 80s. European backpackers stand around vaping on the footpaths in circles of bags and surfboards. Old men stand at the gate of the homes they bought back in the 60s that are now falling apart due to neglect and is slowly being swallowed by the wild weeds and the old knotted tree that leans over the rooftop, whispering a secret plan to the old worn-down house of world domination. The old man looks across the street at two suspicious-looking people using the payphone, probably one of the last remaining payphones for miles. They're so rare these days, it's almost like a monument in remembrance of a time before everybody had a mobile phone in their pocket that can reach anybody at any time. They look back over their shoulder as they tuck the old-fashioned phone between their shoulder and chin and scratch something down on a tiny, dirty-looking notepad with a big biro, and then sneak off down an alleyway where there is a mural of a girl named Sarah that must have died too young, as the date says 1998 to 2018 written below her neck. There is more writing on the wall as you head down Old Grey Street, but none of it is as artistic as that mural. Crudely written black marker on the edge of some fences has a strange combination of lowercase and uppercase letters all jumbled up. The words are also in strange format, almost like a poem, with 3 to 4 words per line. One of them reads something like, "Staino is a dog and a woman basher. He bashed me and raped my sister. Don't buy any weed from him, because it's all grass clippings, and he keeps all the good buds for himself. Rot in hell and eat shit." Underneath that, someone has written in green marker as a reply, "Shut your face up. You don't even know what you're talking about, you stupid junkie bitch. I told you last week that if I ever see you around Steve's house again, I'll hit you with a cricket bat. Stay away from the gazebo if you don't want to chuff." I always wonder if there would ever be a reply to this, as this is the 3rd time I've walked past it, and I'm kind of hoping for a 3rd reply, like it's some kind of public soap opera. Midway down the street, there is renovations being done to a hostel. One side of the street is blocked off, and there is a huge gathering of high visibility tradesmen and women who seem to be always on smoko, sitting on the curb, eating greasy hamburgers and downing cans of Mother energy drinks. The traffic slows to a crawl, and men leer at sex workers who stand just off the road, looking out for someone to acquire their services. A van drove up once, and 3 guys in the front seat talked to a woman as she got into the back of the van, and I hope they brought her back safely. If that was me, I would have been absolutely terrified. The footpath is scattered of tradies and hipsters and dirty old homeless looking people who already look dazed and confused before it's even midday. They walk in a trance, like someone forgetting to bend their knees, and walk like an old Universal monster villain slowly but surely down the street. A church that has been recently renovated into some kind of soup kitchen has an outdoor area that is full of people with dreadlocks and ripped t-shirts and black beanies, propelling bowls of beans and rice into their mouth like this is the first meal they've had in a long time. At the front, a man a little older than I am, with matted hair pulled back of a rainbow headband, sits with his legs spread and his head between his legs. He mutters to himself a series of numbers, and his hands make a series of gestures, like he is signing to two people on either side of him. He looks up as I walk past, and I feel like he's going to ask me for something, but then he turns his head back down as I pass by, and he goes on trying to solve the problem that he's been trying to find an answer for since he woke up that day. Whatever pain I think I felt is nothing compared to the pain these people must have felt and seem to still be going through. The pain is so vast and unbearable that the whole day is about surviving and numbing it all down to a manageable level. But every day becomes a cycle of repetition and slow, deliberate self-destruction. They seem to know no relief for what they're going through, just to patch over holes that still leak what's left of their soul. They begin to fade away as humans and just become pale, transparent versions of themselves. They are completely ignored and sometimes invisible to those who walk past, like the happy couple who hold hands and laugh together and look ahead of optimism and a galvanized sense of self that there is no permanent pain anytime soon in their future. A crazed woman runs out of an alleyway, screaming and raving. Saliva sprays from her blistered lips, and they seem to hang in midair before evaporating as she turns down the footpath and runs past me and everyone else behind me. People step out of her way. People turn back and see where she's going, but then turn back again, as they don't really want to be involved. I walked past the alley, trying to find what she was running from, and all I saw was a long gravelly road in between the backs of people's homes that look like they've been around for more than 100 years or so. There is nobody there, or nobody I can see. No masked man or knife-wielding woman, no monsters or the boogeyman. Maybe it just became all too much. It burned out her brain. The pain was too unbearable and she just had to run away from it all, but mostly from herself. I crossed the road and opened the door to the dentist's waiting room. Two huge men watched me as I pushed the door open, and they sat at the front of a fish and chip shop and stuffed a fistful of red sauce-drenched chips into their mouth without breaking eye contact, like a wild animal who is standing his ground and doesn't want to share his kill/dinner. I sat in the waiting room, and it's like stepping into a halfway point between two worlds. The big glass window in front of me lets me observe the wildlife pass by the street, and a lot of the same characters seem to be walking up and down, constantly in search of something they may never find. On the table in front of me is a men's health magazine of handsome, beautiful people with perfect teeth. And no matter who you are, you cannot look at these images and instantly feel like you're failing as a member of the same species. Finally, I get called into the dentist chair, and he asks me as soon as I walk in, "Have you experienced any pain since last week?" And I can answer with all certainty, no. That's it for another week. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. It really does mean a lot to me. If you're this far, you probably liked the episode, and if you did, then why not like and subscribe on the very device you're using. Leave a review if you can, if there's an option to do so. It really helps me spread the word about this podcast. Sharing this on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you cool kids are using this day, or just telling someone verbally to their face if they listen to the podcast. Maybe recommend this one if it's something that they'll be into. Maybe tell an enemy, then they can listen to it and they won't like it, and then it'll be our little secret. It doesn't really matter. You could follow me on Twitter at Nashtopia. You can follow me also on Instagram at Trav Nash Draws Things. You can follow this podcast on Instagram and Twitter just by searching for Tales from the Mind Boat podcast, and there's also a Facebook group to keep you in the know. There's also a Patreon set up that I mentioned at the start. If you can spare $1 a month to help me get through and pay the bills, use my skills to do so, I'd really appreciate it, and thank you very much to all my Patreon supporters. The music for this podcast is composed by Tim Witt. You can listen to his music right now on Bandcamp and SoundCloud just by searching for Tim Witt Sounds. Everything else is written and produced and spoken and edited by me, Trav Nash, and you're welcome. So that's it for another week. Thank you very much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I hope you're doing well. I hope you have a good week. Until next Monday, stay safe. Peace.